Good day, class. Our topic for this week is already for the fourth quarter, and this is still the continuation of our accounting cycle for a business service. So far, we have already tackled about the four steps in accounting cycle, namely the transactions, the journal entries, posting, trial balance. Now, the fifth step is worksheet. And the sixth step is adjusting journal entries. So, ano ba yung makikita natin sa worksheet? At tayo ay tumalon patungo sa adjusting journal entries. Well, ang laman lang naman ng worksheet ay ito, ayon sa inyong nakikita. Andiyan ang account titles, yung trial balance, and then yung adjustment, and then yung adjusted trial balance. So yung naunang trial balance, ito yung unadjusted trial balance. And then after adjusted trial balance, we have the financial statements na. So yung income statement at saka ang balance sheet. So yan lang naman ang worksheet, and now we will tackle about the adjusting journal entries. So, what are adjusting journal entries? Adjusting entries or adjusting journal entries are made to update the accounts and bring them to their correct balances. In preparation of adjusting entries is an application of the accrual concept of accounting and the matching principle. Ang purpose ng adjusting entries ay para i-update lang yung inyong records mula doon sa nauna o original na journal entry. Nagkaroon ng pagbabago, ina-update niya lang. At dito rin sinasabi ay yung application na ng accrual concept at saka matching principle. The accrual concept states that income is recognized when earned, regardless of when collected, and expense is recognized when incurred, regardless of when paid. The matching principle aims to align expenses with revenues. Expenses should be recognized in the period when the revenues generated by such expenses are recognized. So, kailan natin ginagawa ang journal entries ng adjusting? Ito ay pagkatapos ng unadjusted trial balance. The main purpose of adjusting entries is to update the accounts to conform to the accrual concept. At the end of the accounting period, some income and expenses may have not been recorded, taken up, or updated. Hence, there is a need to update the accounts. Ang sinasabi rito, at the end of the month or the accounting period, may ibang mga income at expenses na hindi siya na-record between the dates within a month. So, dapat ay i-record natin siya, i-recognize natin siya by the end of the month. If adjusting entries are not prepared, some income, expense, asset, and liability accounts may not reflect their true values when reported in the financial statements. For this reason, adjusting entries are necessary. So, what are the types of adjusting entries? We have accrued income, accrued expense, deferred income, prepaid expense, depreciation, and the doubtful accounts or bad debts and other allowances. So ano ba ang accrued income? Accrued income or accrued revenue, it refers to income already earned but has not yet been collected. Na-earn na, nagawa mo na yung pinakatrabaho mo, yung serbisyo mo sa iyong kliyente, pero hindi ka pa nababayaran. So, hindi mo pa nakokolekta. When a company has performed services or sold goods to customer, it should be recognized as income even if the amount is still to be collected at a future date. If no journal entry was ever made for the above, then an adjusting entry is necessary. The adjusting entry to record accrued revenue is, so yung date ilalagay natin, and then debit the receivable account at credit ang income account. Ano-ano ba itong mga receivable accounts na ito? It's like the accounts receivable, rent receivable, interest receivable, at iba pa. Ano naman ang nasa income account? Yung service revenue, yung rent income, interest income, at iba pa. So ito yung example, no? Kung walang nagawang entry originally, no, walang existing record. For example, ito sa interest. So, walang record. Pagdating ng adjusting entry, dapat i-recognize na natin yung income. Example, no? Charge Charlie Brown a customer interest to pay later for an invoice. Interest amount is $200 as of June 30, 2017. So, ito na yung gagawing adjusting entry. Debit interest receivable at credit interest income. So, kadalasan nga itong ganitong scenario or kung bakit tayo naggagawa ng ganitong adjusting entry ay dahil usually sa interest. Kasi, pagka-interest, nangutang ka or nangutang si client, tapos, ang usapan ay babayaran next month. So, normally, wala tayong nire-record agad na income at the end of the month o for that month. Kaya, ang nangyayari, no record talaga. Kaya, ang sabi rito, by the end of the month, dapat ay i-record natin, i-recognize natin yung interest income. So, i-set up natin si interest receivable, debit, at interest income, credit. Accrued expense o kabaliktaran naman ito ng accrued income. Kung ang accrued income, ang treatment natin dyan ay asset, ito namang accrued expense, ang treatment natin dito ay liability. In other words kasi, yung accrued income ay accrued income receivable. Ito namang accrued expense ay accrued expense payable. So yan ang treatment dyan, kaya siya ay liability. Accrued expense refers to expenses that are already incurred but not yet paid. If a company incurred, used, or consumed all or part of an expense, that expense or part of it should be properly recognized even if it has not yet been paid. So, kagaya rin nung sa accrued income, if no entry ever made doon sa month na yon, dapat at the end of the month ay i-recognize na natin si liability account by making the adjusting entry. In this case, ang debit ay expense account, tapos ang credit ay ang liability account. Ano-ano ba yung expense account? Kagaya ng utilities expense, yung rent expense, yung interest expense. At ano-ano naman ang liability account na pwede rito? Yung utilities payable, rent payable, interest payable, accounts payable, at iba pa. Pangatlo, deferred income. Unearned revenue, also known as unearned income, deferred revenue, or deferred income represents revenue already collected but not yet earned. Ito naman deferred income ay nabayaran na pero hindi pa na-earn. Kung baga, advance payment sa iyo to, pero hindi mo pa nagagawa ang serbisyo mo sa iyong kliyente. Unearned revenues are considered liabilities since these are advance payments from your customers wherein services are not yet rendered. Ang treatment dito ay liabilities kasi nga binayaran ka na ni client, parang advance payment ang nangyari, pero ikaw hindi mo pa nagagawa ang trabaho mo sa kanya. Kaya utang mo yung iyong serbisyo sa kanya. Kaya ang treatment dito, liability. At the end of the period, unearned revenues must be checked and adjusted if necessary. The adjusting entry for unearned revenue depends upon the journal entry made when it was initially recorded. So, sabi rito, kung merong nagawang journal entry, yung original, para doon sa transaction, nakadepende doon kung ano yung journal entry na gawa mo para sa journal entry naman na gagawin mo dito sa adjustment. There are two ways of recording unearned revenue. We have the liability method and the income method. Under the liability method, a liability account is recorded when the amount is collected. Binayaran ka, pero ang setup na ginawa mo ay liability account. Liability ang iyong journal entry. The common accounts used are unearned revenue, deferred income, advances from customers, etc. And number 4, we have the prepaid expense. Kabaliktaran naman ito ng deferred income. Kung ang deferred income ay nabayaran ka na pero hindi mo pa nagagawa ang trabaho mo sa kliyente mo, dito naman sa prepaid expense, these prepaid expenses or prepayments represent payments made for expenses which have not yet been incurred. So, nabayaran mo na agad pero hindi pa na-incur. In other words, these are advance payments. Advance yung bayad mo sa kanila. So, by a company for supplies, rent, utilities, and others that are still to be consumed. Since these are prepayments, they are not recorded as expenses. Rather, they are classified as current assets since they are readily available for use. So, ang prepaid expenses ay assets. At dito rin naman, meron din tayong ways of recording o yung method. Dito meron tayong asset method at saka expense method. Kagaya nung sa nauna, income method saka liability method. Dito naman, asset method and expense method. Kung originally ang setup mong journal entry ay asset method ang ginawa mo, ang adjustment na gagawin mo ay expense method naman. Kabaliktaran, kung expense method yung setup mo originally, sa adjustment mo, gagamitin mo si asset method. Panglima, we have the depreciation. When a fixed asset is acquired by a company, it is recorded at cost. Generally, cost is equal to the purchase price of the asset. This cost is recognized as an asset and not expense. The cost is to be allocated as expense to the periods in which the asset is used. This is done by recording depreciation expense. Ang sinasabi rito, kung magkano ang bili mo dun sa asset na yon o dun sa fixed asset na yon, i-allocate mo yung cost ng asset at gagawin mo siyang expense over the periods ng buhay ng asset na yon. So there are two types of depreciation, physical and functional depreciation. Physical depreciation results from wear and tear due to frequent use and or exposure to elements like rain, sun, and wind. So ito yung mga, halimbawa yung building, yung machinery na nagkakaroon ng wear and tear dahil sa palagi ang ginagamit. Functional or economic depreciation happens when an asset becomes inadequate for its purpose or becomes obsolete. In this case, the asset decreases in value even without any physical deterioration. Example natin dito yung mga ginagamit sa mining, no? Dumarating yung time na nag-deplete na yung kanilang economic use. Kumbaga, nauubos, nag-go-obsolete na. Kaya, ito yung tinatawag nating functional or economic depreciation. There are several methods in depreciating fixed assets. Yung pinaka-common na ginagamit ditong approach ay ang depreciation na straight line method. Under the straight line method, the cost of the fixed asset is distributed evenly over the life of the asset. Paano ginagawa yun? I-divide mo lang siya kung ilang taon ang useful siya sa operation ng business. Kung 10 years siya, ganun lang, divided by 10 years. How to record depreciation expense? Depreciation is recorded by debiting depreciation expense and crediting accumulated depreciation. This is recorded at the end of the period, usually at the end of every month, quarter, or year. Number 6, we have doubtful accounts or bad debts and other allowances. Companies provide services or sell goods for cash or on credit. Allowing credit tends to encourage more sales. However, businesses that allow credit are faced with the risk that their receivables may not be collected. So para dumami ang benta ng isang kumpanya, ng isang establishment, or ng iyong business, nagpapautang ka. Ngayon, ang risk nga doon, kapag ikaw naman ay nagpapautang, may tendency na hindi ka mabayaran. Accounts receivable should be presented in the balance sheet at net realizable value, the most probable amount that the company will be able to collect. So example, net realizable value for accounts receivable is computed like this. Accounts receivable, yung gross amount, 100,000, less natin, allowance for budgets, 3,000, and then accounts receivable, net realizable value ito, so 97,000. So ganyan yung presentation niya sa balance sheet. Allowance for budgets, also often called allowance for doubtful accounts, represents the estimated portion of the accounts receivable that the company will not be able to collect. Take note that this is estimate. There are several methods in estimating doubtful accounts. The estimates are often based on the company's past experiences. So ginagamit din dito guys yung aging of accounts receivable. So usually kung ano yung pinakamatagal ng matagal ng utang, super past due na kumbaga, na hindi nakokolekta, yan na yung pwede nilang reference basis ng gagawing bad debts or allowance for doubtful accounts. And of course, syempre, ina-approve yan ng management. To recognize doubtful accounts or bad debts, an adjusting entry must be made at the end of the period. The adjusting entry for bad debts look like this. Bad debt expense, debit, credit mo C, allowance for bad debts. Bad debt expense or doubtful accounts expense, this is an expense account. Hence, it is presented in the income statement. It represents the estimated uncollectible amount for credit sales or revenues made during the period. Allowance for bad debts or allowance for doubtful accounts. A balance sheet account that represents the total estimated amount that the company will not be able to collect from its total accounts receivable. So in other words, yung bad debts expense ay makikita sa income statement at yung allowance for bad debts ay makikita naman sa balance sheet. Ito ay isang contra-asset account. Kagaya ng nakikita nyo dito sa example na ito. Ganyan ang kanyang presentation sa balance sheet. So, nagkakaiba-iba lang minsan sa tawag o sa termino na ginagamit. Bad debt expense, doubtful accounts expense, allowance for doubtful accounts, allowance for bad debts, pero iisa lang naman ang mga ibig sabihin ng mga yan. Composition of an adjusting entry. Adjusting entries affect at least one nominal account and one real account. A nominal account is an account whose balance is measured from period to period. Nominal accounts include all accounts in the income statement plus owner's withdrawal. They are also called temporary accounts or income statement accounts. So yung nominal accounts, yung makikita natin sa income statement na mini-measure sila by a period, from period to period. For example, from January 1 to January 30, yun yung nominal accounts kasi mini-measure lang siya mula January 1 hanggang January 30 lamang. So examples nito ay yung mga revenue, expense, usually yon, tsaka yung drawing. Real account has a balance that is measured cumulatively. Ibig sabihin, naiipon yan yung balanse ang natitira rather than from period to period. Real accounts include all accounts in the balance sheet. They are also called permanent accounts or balance sheet accounts. Kapag nasa balance sheet naman ang mga accounts, at tawag dito ay real account or permanent accounts na ang mga ito ay kinukuha natin ang balanse after natin mag-post sa ledger or sa account. Yung normal balance niya, yun yung nire-record natin sa balance sheet At ito, ang tawag dito sa mga to ay real account. Kasi tuloy-tuloy siya, balance ng at the end of the month, then balance again at the end of the succeeding month. So, ganun ang mangyayari sa kanya. Unlike yung nominal account na pagkatapos ng one example ng January, iba na naman sa February at iba na naman sa March and so on and so forth. All adjusting entries include at least a nominal account and a real account. Now, let us have some examples of these adjusting entries. So, example, meron ditong unadjusted trial balance. As of December 31, 2020, we have the debit and credit totals of 43,750. Ano-ano mga nandito sa unadjusted trial balance? We have the asset accounts, the liability accounts, the equity accounts, at saka revenue and expense accounts. In this example, as you can see, Gray Electronic Repair Service has a total balance of 43,750, both in debit and credit columns. This is not yet the final source of our financial statements since there are still possible adjustments to some of the accounts. So, for example, yung sa accrued income, on December 31, 2020, Gray Electronic Repair Services rendered 300 worth of services to a client. However, the amount has not yet been collected. Nagawa mo na yung service mo sa client, pero hindi ka pa niya binabayaran. It was agreed that the customer will pay the amount on January 15, 2021. Take note, ang transaction ay nangyari December 31, 2020. The transaction was not recorded in the books of the company as of 2020. So, walang nangyaring record or recording doon sa books ng company noong December 31. No record. In this case, we should make an adjusting entry in 2020 to recognize the income since it has already been earned. The adjusting entry would be ito. Debit accounts receivable, 300 pesos and credit service revenue, 300 pesos. Then, ilalatag natin ito sa ledger or in this case, sa T account. So, yung 300 ay dapat nating ilagay sa debit side ng T account under accounts receivable. Yung service revenue naman, ilalagay natin siya or ipopost natin siya sa credit side which is 300. Then, i-label natin as adjustment. And then, itotal mo yung dalawang yan. Kasi meron ng existing na 3,400 at saka 9,550. Yun yung balance sila sa T account bago nangyari, bago inirecord itong adjusting entry. Pangalawa, accrued expense for the month of December 2020, Gray Electronic Repair Services used a total of 1,800 worth of electricity and water. The company received the bills on January 10, 2021. When should the expense be recorded? December 2020 or January 2021. So, ang sagot dito in December 2020. According to the accrual concept of accounting, expenses are recognized when incurred regardless of when paid. Kailan nangyari ang transaksyon? December, pero hindi pa nababayaran. So, i-record mo na. I-recognize mo siya as expense. So, in this case, December 31, debit natin utilities expense, 1,800, and then utilities payable, 1,800. And then, ilatag natin sa T account. So, sa posting, yung utilities payable, nag-post tayo ng 1,800 sa credit. And then, sa utilities expense naman, 1,800 sa debit. Example number 3, deferred income. Suppose on January 10, 2021, ABC Company made 30,000 advance collections from its customers. If the liability method is used, the entry would be, so this particular transaction is not related to gray electronics. Nagbibigay lang tayo ng example kung paano natin gagawin ang adjustment. Original entry, cash, 30,000 debit, and then credit, unearned revenue, 30,000. Ang ginamit na method dito ay liability method. Take note that the amount has not yet been earned, thus it is proper to record it as liability. Now, what if at the end of the month, 20% of the unearned revenue has been rendered? This will require an adjusting entry. Ano ba yung 20% ng 30,000? It is 6,000. Yung 6,000 daw na iyon ay actual income na kasi yun yung portion na na-render mo na yung iyong services. So, paano natin gagawin yung adjustment dito? Una, recognition of 6,000 pesos. Pangalawa, decrease in liability or yung unearned revenue. Ang adjusting entry dito ay debit, unearned revenue 6,000 and credit, service income 6,000. Kapag nilagay natin yan sa T account, pansinin niyo yung unearned revenue na originally merong 30,000 credit kasi nga liability method ang ginamit dito noong January 10, 2021. Pagdating ng adjustment ay nag-debit naman tayo ng 6,000. Dito ay nabawasan si 30,000 ng 6,000. So, yung 6,000 na yun yung service income at i-recognize natin siya as income. Kaya ilagay natin siya sa credit. Therefore, all in all, yung 30,000 ay magkano na lang yung talagang actual na unearned revenue niya. 30,000 minus 6,000 is 24,000. Yun na lang talaga ang actual na unearned revenue. Number 4, prepaid expenses. Recall the example that we had with Gray Electronics Repair Services. We had a journal entry below recording the purchase of service supplies in the amount of 1,500. Entry, service supplies, debit, 1,500. Tapos cash na 1,500. Take note that the amount has not yet been incurred or used. Thus, it is proper to record it as an asset or the asset method is used and not as an expense. Suppose at the end of the month, 60% of the supplies have been used. Thus, out of the 1,500, 900 worth of supplies have been used and 600 remain unused. The 900 must then be recognized as expense since it has already been used. In preparing the adjusting entry, our goal is to transfer the used part from the asset initially recorded into expense for us to arrive at the proper balances shown in the illustration above. So the adjusting entry will include number 1, recognition of expense. Kasi nga asset method yung ginamit. Ngayon, kailangan nating i-recognize yung expense which is yung 60%. Number 2, decrease in the asset initially recorded. Ito yung 40%. So, entry natin dito, adjusting entry, debit, service supplies expense, 900, and credit, service supplies, 900. Binawasan natin ngayon si asset. Kasi nga, nirecognize natin yung actual na naging expense yung 900. Kung kaya't nag-debit tayo ng expense. Makikita natin dito sa T account na nag-credit tayo ng 900 pesos as adjustment mula dun sa 1,500. So, ibig sabihin, 1,500 nag-minus natin si 900, ang actual na asset na service supplies ay 600 na lang. Yung 900 ay naging expense na. So, under na siya ng account service supplies expense. Then we have depreciation. Gray Electronic Repair Services acquired their service equipment for 16,000 at the beginning of 2020. Assume that the equipment can be used for 4 years. The entire amount of 16,000 shall be distributed over for 4 years. Hence, a depreciation expense of 4,000 each year. So, ang usually ginagamit nga dito ay straight line method of depreciation. Paano natin kinocompute ito or ano ang formula? Depreciable cost o yung historical cost ng asset minus natin yung residual value or in other words, yung scrap value. Or ano ba ito scrap value? Ito yung kapag natapos mo na yung depreciation o yung na-consume mo na yung life ng building, in this case, 4 years, may ibebenta mo pa si asset ng ganitong halaga. Yan. In this case, wala. Kasi walang na-mention. So, depreciable cost minus the residual value of 0 divided by the estimated useful life, which is 4 years. So, ang per year depreciation niya is 4,000 per year. Tandaan nyo guys, iyan ay per year. So, kung tayo ay may monthly, nag-adjust tayo monthly, 4,000 divided by 12 pa yan. What if the equipment has an estimated residual value of 4,000 after 4 years? The depreciation expense then would be computed as 16,000 yung cost niya minus yung scrap value or residual value or yung amount na maibebenta mo pa si asset after the useful life niya na 4 years. And then divide natin sa 4 years. Magkano? 3,000 per year. And then kung per month naman, 3,000 divided by 12. Entry, December 31, depreciation expense, 4,000 sa debit. And then credit, accumulated depreciation, 4,000. Kapag impose natin yan sa T-account, yung accumulated depreciation, service equipment, naka-credit si 4,000. And then, si depreciation expense naman ay naka-debit. Si depreciation expense ay makikita natin sa income statement and then si accumulated depreciation ay makikita natin sa balance sheet. Isa itong contra asset account. Kapag sinabing contra asset account siya, nakalagay si particular equipment or si service equipment in this case, tapos merong less accumulated depreciation. And then, yun na yung true value niya. Yung presentation, tingnan natin dito. Ito ay from 2020 hanggang 2023 kasi 4 years. Yung original cost as of 2020, 16,000. Pare-pareho yan, 21, 2022, 2023, 16,000. And then, every year, madadagdagan ng accumulated depreciation. First year, 4,000. Second year, 8,000 hanggang 16,000 na pagdating ng 2023. Ibig sabihin, after 2023, ang carrying value na ng iyong equipment ay 0 na. Notice that the end of the useful life of the asset, the carrying value is equal to the residual value. Tandaan nyo guys, no? Sa balance sheet, kung 0 residual value na si particular asset, kinakailangan pa rin nating makita siya sa balance sheet. Pero magkano ang ilalagay mo? Hindi siya 0, kundi 1 peso. Para lang ipakita na yung particular asset na yun ay existing pa. Kaya ilalagay natin ang 1 peso. Doubtful accounts or bad debts. Gray Electronic Repair Services estimates that 100 pesos of its credit revenue for the period will not be collected. The entry at the end of the period would be debit bad debts expense of 100 and credit allowance for bad debts 100. Same sa depreciation, yung bad debts expense ay makikita sa income statement. Ang allowance for bad debts ay isang contra asset account. Makikita natin ito sa balance sheet. At ganoon din naman sa posting sa T-account, pareho din naman. Bad debt expense, nasa debit siya. Tapos, yung 100, lalagay natin sa credit ng allowance for bad debts. Therefore, ang makikita natin sa presentation na yan, sa balance sheet ay accounts receivable yung gross, 3,400 less allowance for bad debts of 100. Kaya, ang iyong net value sa accounts receivable ay 3,300 na lang. After posting the adjusting entries, next will be posting it to the worksheet and create the adjusted trial balance. So after nung unang unadjusted trial balance, i-post na natin sa worksheet itong adjustments na ginawa natin. So ganun pa rin, debit, credit, ano yung naging debit, ano yung naging credit. Tapos kung originally wala doon yung mga account title, nung nag-adjust ka, yung ginamit mong adjustment, ilalagay mo sa baba yung mga account title na dinagdag mo, yung ginamit mo sa adjusting entry. And then, plus minus lang yan hanggang sa mag-end ka sa adjusted trial balance. And then, yung mga susunod na column dito, yung income statement and then balance sheet. Yan na yung magiging basis mo para sa iyong gagawing financial statement. Tandaan nyo guys na ang debit credit ay dapat pareho pa rin para balanse. Kagaya nito. Yung debit at credit ng unadjusted trial balance pareho. Yung debit at credit ng adjusted trial balance ay pareho din, as well as the adjustments made. Pagka yan ay balanse, ready ka na for the balance sheet and income statement. Kapag hindi balanse ang iyong debit at credit saan man dyan, alin man dyan, babalikan mo si transactions at hahanapin mo kung bakit at saan nagkaroon ng imbalance. So that is it for this week. Itong mga lessons natin para sa adjusting journal entry. Now, for our question of the week, Lloyda regular as sole proprietor bought an insurance for the inventory of his business, 24,000 last October 1, 2019. The bookkeeper made this entry. Debit prepaid insurance, 24,000. Cash, 24,000 para sa credit. What is the adjusting entry at the end of the year? Letter A, debit prepaid insurance of 6,000. Credit insurance expense of 6,000. Letter B, debit insurance expense 6,000, credit prepaid insurance 6,000. Letter C, prepaid insurance 24,000, debit insurance expense 24,000, credit. Letter D, debit insurance expense 24,000 and credit prepaid insurance 24,000. Comment your answers on the comment section. Hanggang dito na lang class ang ating first week para sa fourth quarter. See you again next week for our next lesson. Have a nice day.